She only wanted to preserve the past. But one night with the wrong man rewrote her entire future. Nadia Mills was the last person you'd expect to share one forbidden night with a millionaire CEO. Yet that single stolen evening left her carrying a secret far bigger than love or heartbreak. It left her carrying 4 lives she never planned for. What would you do if a man touched your heart, disappeared with the sunrise, and unknowingly left you pregnant with quadruplets? Would you chase closure or protect your peace? And if fate brought him back into your life, would you risk it all? Again? Hello, my family. Without further ado, please let's dive right into this story. In case you're new here and haven't subscribed, here at Love and Twilights, we bring you the best love stories in the world. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any story. Now, let's begin. Nadia Mills adjusted the strap of her modest evening gown as she scanned the grand hall of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The visionary technology gala glittered with wealth and influence. Crystal glasses clinked beneath towering floral arrangements, and every corner of the room whispered status. Yet for all the sparkle and social climbing, Nadia felt the familiar detachment of an outsider. She belonged here, at least on paper. As the director of digital archives, she'd led the museum's most successful project in over a decade. But success hadn't changed her background, raised in foster care, funded through scholarships, powered by sheer will. As she tried to quiet the tension in her shoulders, a voice broke through her thoughts. "You look like you're calculating escape routes." Nadia turned to meet the gaze of Julian Thorne, CEO of Quantum Dynamics. His name alone could shake global markets, but here he stood beside her, drink in hand, looking interested. Her voice caught slightly. "Mr. Thorne, I prefer Julian, and I prefer the company of brilliant minds over billion-dollar egos. Walk with me?" She hesitated. Protocol and instinct screamed to keep it professional. But something in his voice wasn't commanding. It was curious. She nodded. All right. They slipped away from the buzz of the gala and into the Egyptian exhibit, the very project her team had spent months digitizing. Dim lights flickered across a reconstructed temple display, casting warm glows across their evening wear. As Nadia explained the work, Julian listened, not with the idle nods of someone trying to impress, but with focus. "You're not just preserving objects," he said quietly. "You're preserving meaning." She paused, surprised by how precisely he had understood her intention. Few did. "That's exactly it." He stepped closer, his expression softening. "Would you have dinner with me? Somewhere quieter?" She expected an upscale rooftop restaurant. Instead, he brought her to a quaint Italian spot in Brooklyn, intimate, candlelit, and quietly romantic. Over handmade pasta, the layers began to peel away. He told her of a single mother and a childhood built on resilience. She shared her long climb from a forgotten system into a world of academia and curation. His laughter was real, her smiles unguarded. The evening grew thick with the kind of emotional tension that came not from flirtation, but from two people discovering something unexpected. By dessert, the spark between them could no longer be ignored. Julian didn't take her to a penthouse. He took her to a brownstone, lived in, loved, and quiet. Shelves lined with books, walls scattered with family photos, soft jazz playing on an old record player. "This is where I come to breathe," he said. In that space, the connection ignited, unrushed, profound, and tender. He touched her not like a man who wanted to conquer, but like one who had finally found stillness. Their night together was more than passion. It was two souls colliding in a city that rarely paused for anything genuine. By morning, reality crept back in. Julian sat on the edge of the bed, already dressed, 2 coffees in hand. "I have to fly to Singapore." She nodded, bracing herself. "I'll be gone a while, but I'll reach out," he said. Nadia gave a small smile. "We don't have to pretend this was more than one night." He looked at her for a long moment. "Thank you for reminding me what real feels like." And just like that, he was gone. Weeks passed. Life moved forward until the morning sickness came. Then the missed period. Then the positive test. Then the ultrasound. "There are 4, her doctor whispered. She stared at the screen. 4 flickering heartbeats. 4. Her body froze. Her brain raced. Her life, once neatly compartmentalized, now bent to a new reality. She didn't call him. Not yet. Nadia sat on the edge of her bed, one hand pressed against the slight but undeniable swell of her belly. Morning light spilled through her blinds, illuminating the pale sonogram images taped above her desk. proof that what happened that night hadn't ended at sunrise. It had only just begun. In the quiet of her apartment, she counted the heartbeats again. 4. She had told no one. Her closest friends knew she had taken medical leave from the museum, citing exhaustion and personal re-centering. It wasn't untrue, but it wasn't the full truth either. How do you explain to people that one night, one unlikely moment, had given rise to a miracle that even science could barely explain? Pregnancy brought changes quickly. Nadia's slim frame expanded, her energy waned, and appointments became constant. Specialists were involved. Her calendar filled with scans, nutritional plans, and high-risk monitoring. Her world became smaller and quieter. But her resolve? It grew stronger. She made arrangements to work from home. She mapped out a financial plan. She considered moving, but couldn't yet bear the thought of leaving the city that had watched her rise. Every time her phone buzzed with a news alert, Julian's company unveiling a new innovation, Julian photographed at a summit, Julian speaking on AI ethics, her stomach turned. Was it nausea? Was it longing? She deleted his number, re-added it, hovered over the call button, never pressed it. At 6 months, the wait became literal. She collapsed at home, nothing dramatic, just a dizzy spell that left her shaken. The paramedics arrived fast. One noticed her emergency contact listed under J. She didn't think anything of it until 2 days later, when she walked out of her OB's office and saw a sleek black car idling at the curb. The door opened, and there he was. Julian stepped out in a dark coat, his eyes locking on her, wide, alert, full of questions. And then they fell to her belly. There was no mistaking it now. He didn't speak right away. He just stared. Then softly, "Is it mine?" She met his gaze, chin lifted. Yes. The car took them to Central Park. The autumn sun painted the leaves in gold and fire. They walked in silence at first, her arms folded protectively, his pace slow to match hers. "I didn't know," he said finally, voice low. "Until the hospital called. They wouldn't say much, just that I was your emergency contact." "I never thought you'd be contacted," she murmured. "Why didn't you tell me?" She stopped, facing him. "Because I didn't know how. Because I didn't want to be another story of a woman chasing a rich man with a surprise pregnancy. Because I wanted these babies to be mine first, mine to love, mine to protect." Julian's jaw clenched, not in anger but in pain. "You thought I'd turn my back. I didn't know what you'd do. And now," Nadia's gaze dropped to her stomach. "Now, it's not just about what you do. It's about what they need. And I didn't want chaos around them from the start." They found a quiet bench overlooking the water. Wind rustled the trees. Julian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I came back from Singapore looking for you," he said, eyes locked on the horizon. "You were gone. No one would say why. I assumed you wanted distance." "I did," she admitted. "But I also hoped you'd think about that night, not as a mistake, but as something meaningful." He turned to her. "It was meaningful. I haven't connected like that with anyone in over a decade. That's why it shook me." Silence stretched between them, warm and uncomfortable. Then Julian reached out, slowly, his hand grazing hers on the bench. "I want to be here," he said quietly. "For them, for you. If you'll let me." The air changed, not cleared, not resolved, but changed. Nadia placed his hand on her belly, timing it with a light movement inside. Julian's eyes widened as the subtle shift greeted him. "They move all the time now," she whispered. Julian blinked hard. "They're real." She smiled faintly. "Very," and for the first time since the test turned positive, she exhaled deeply. Maybe not with full trust, but with hope. "Hello, my beautiful family. Do you believe some connections are meant to find their way back, no matter the distance? If this moment moved you and you're enjoying the story, let us know in the comments. And if you're still with us, subscribe and hit that like button. We're just halfway through this emotional journey." 2 days after their walk through Central Park, Julian invited Nadia to lunch. Not at a 5-star restaurant or a press-friendly location, but in a quiet, sun-dappled courtyard behind his brownstone. The table was already set when she arrived, grilled vegetables, fresh salad, and her favorite ginger tea. She took a seat cautiously. "I thought this might be a proposal meeting." He shook his head. "This isn't business, Nadia. I just wanted us to talk." The conversation unfolded with deliberate softness. He offered support, medical, financial, logistical, but she drew a firm line. "I won't be managed," she said. Julian smiled, not condescending but appreciative. Wouldn't dare try. They started spending time together, slowly. He accompanied her to appointments, asked questions the doctors respected, and read every article on high-order multiples he could find. One evening she found a stack of parenting books on his coffee table, titles marked with sticky notes and highlighter. A spreadsheet printed out beside them tracked feeding schedules, sleep cycles, and developmental milestones. She lifted an eyebrow. "You're making charts?" "I run a billion-dollar tech company," he said, pouring her a glass of water. "If I can't handle 4 babies, I should retire." Her laughter surprised them both. Nadia had kept her distance, emotionally, but little cracks began to form, like when he showed up with a foot massager after she complained of leg cramps, or when she mentioned craving something sweet at 2 a.m. and found chocolate croissants on her doorstep the next morning, or when he touched her belly with reverence, whispering hello to the babies as though they were already listening. Each moment chipped away at the wall she had built, not from pride, but from years of surviving alone. One afternoon, Julian invited her to see a quiet project of his, a museum donation he was funding, inspired by her digitization work. A team had begun scanning endangered artifacts from war zones and uploading them into an interactive preservation hub. Her name was listed in the grant proposal. "You inspired this," he said as she read it, stunned. "You're funding this under my model," she whispered. "Because it deserves to live, just like our children." The words struck her like a chord. He wasn't just showing up for the babies. He was showing up for her, her dreams, her voice, her purpose. That night, he walked her to her car. Autumn wind swirled around them. "Nadia," he said, pausing, "I don't want to rush anything, but I need you to know, this isn't just about responsibility for me. I care about you. I care about what we could be." Her breath caught. "I need to protect my peace," she said softly. He nodded. "Then let me earn a place inside it, not disrupt it." The moment didn't demand a kiss. It didn't need one. It lived in eye contact, honesty, and the tension of possibility. They began preparing for the babies together. Cribs, bassinets, swaddles, safety gates. Julian's once minimalist brownstone slowly transformed into a maze of baby gear and late-night feeding prep. They argued over names, playfully. "Something classic," she said. "Nothing pretentious." "I was thinking Elon II, he joked. She threw a baby blanket at him. At a prenatal class, they were mistaken for a married couple. Nadia didn't correct the instructor. Julian noticed, but said nothing, a subtle smile tugging at his lips. By the 8th month, Nadia barely recognized her own reflection. Her once graceful stride had become a waddle. Sleep came in short bursts. Her belly stretched with the weight of 4 growing miracles. Julian had practically moved in, not in title but in presence. He slept on the guest room couch, rising whenever she needed water, heat packs, or reassurance at 3 a.m. His calm steadiness became her anchor. They had a system now. They read baby development aloud from pregnancy apps, played soft jazz for the unborn babies, and went for slow walks on quiet streets when the swelling wasn't too bad. Despite everything, Nadia felt peace, and that terrified her. Because peace never came without a price. It happened on a Thursday. They were in the kitchen. She laughed at something he said about naming a baby Quantum, and then her breath hitched. A sudden pain knifed through her lower back. Her glass dropped to the floor. Julian caught her before she hit the tiles. Within minutes, they were in the car. Her breathing was shallow. His hands didn't shake, but his jaw clenched tight enough to crack stone. At the hospital, machines beeped, nurses moved quickly, and the doctor examined her with narrowed eyes. "Early labor signs. We're going to try to delay it a bit longer if we can," the doctor said. Nadia stared at the ceiling as monitors tracked her contractions. Her voice cracked. "What if they come now?" Julian sat beside her, taking her hand. "Then we meet them now. And I'll be right here." The next 48 hours blurred into slow fear and whispered prayers. Julian refused to leave. He slept in a chair beside her. He reviewed updates from his company without sound, his laptop dimmed. But every few minutes his eyes drifted back to her. At one point she woke in the night to find him sitting beside her, gently rubbing her arm, lips moving in silence. "What are you doing?" she whispered. He leaned closer. "Promising them I'll be better than what I had, that I'll show up." Labor came fast and sudden just after dawn. Nurses filled the room. The OB calmly took command. Julian changed into scrubs with trembling hands. As he followed the team into the operating room, he wasn't CEO Julian Thorne. He was a man on the edge of witnessing his entire world shift. Through the chaos, Nadia focused on his voice, steady, encouraging, always present. The babies came one by one, tiny cries, then the shuffle of pediatric teams sweeping them off to warmers. 2 boys, 2 girls, all small, all real. Nadia faded into exhausted silence as the final baby was delivered. Julian leaned down and kissed her forehead. "You did it," he whispered, voice cracking. "You brought them here." Later, in the neonatal unit, they stood side by side in front of 4 incubators. "Are we allowed to touch them?" Julian asked softly. A nurse nodded. "Only with gloves for now. But they know you're here." Julian reached in, brushing a fingertip gently over one baby's foot. His expression melted. "They're unbelievable." Nadia leaned on him. 1 night, 4 lives. He turned, pulling her gently into his arms. And not one moment of it was meaningless. They chose names the next day, together. Luca, Ariel, Elijah, Nova, each one carrying weight, each one considered, not inherited. No boardroom, no algorithm, no plan could have predicted this. But standing in that hospital room, watching Julian speak softly to their children, Nadia realized she wasn't just watching a man change. She was witnessing a new chapter begin. They brought the babies home 6 weeks later, swaddled, tiny, and hungry. The brownstone had been transformed. Cribs lined the nursery, soft mobiles spun above them, and a playlist of lullabies played quietly in the background. They took turns with feedings, sometimes collapsing into laughter over spilled formula or mismatched socks. Julian installed a baby monitor system so sophisticated, NASA would have been impressed. They were exhausted, overwhelmed, but neither wanted to be anywhere else. One night, as the last baby finally drifted to sleep, Nadia leaned her head on Julian's shoulder and whispered, "This still doesn't feel real." He kissed the top of her head. "It's real, and it's ours." The first article surfaced quietly on a niche blog. Reclusive tech titan, rumored to have secret family. At first, Julian dismissed it. Tabloids were always grasping for angles. But by the second week, headlines grew bolder. Someone had photographed him outside the hospital carrying an infant car seat. Nadia woke to her phone buzzing with anonymous messages and press inquiries. "They found us," she whispered, voice tight. Julian scanned the screen, then looked up, expression unreadable. "Give me an hour." Julian called his legal team, issued takedown requests, temporarily disabled his social media, hired private security to keep the brownstones safe. Everything moved with military precision, but some damage couldn't be contained. Museum colleagues reached out with polite curiosity. Neighbors watched more closely, and Nadia, whose world had always been personal, private, protected, suddenly felt exposed. At dinner, she spoke quietly, eyes fixed on her fork. "They're not going to stop, are they?" Julian reached across the table, his fingers grazing hers. "No, but I will stand between them and you." In the weeks that followed, the quiet rhythm of their new life began to change. Reporters lingered near the block. Delivery drivers asked too many questions. Nadia couldn't step out with a stroller without scanning the sidewalk. Worse than the noise outside was the silence between them. Julian grew distant, not cold, but distracted. He was handling it all, but something in his eyes told her it was costing him more than he admitted. One night she confronted him. "You're pulling away." He stood at the window, back to her. "I'm trying to protect you. I didn't ask for that. I asked for honesty." He turned slowly. "Then here it is. I don't know how to protect you without losing parts of myself." She found out 2 days later, from an employee at the museum. Julian's company had quietly withdrawn a major sponsorship. The museum board was scrambling to replace the funding. When she confronted him, he didn't deny it. "I didn't want you blamed for favoritism," he said, "or accused of trading integrity for influence." Her heart pounded. "So, you chose silence again. You made a decision for both of us without talking to me." His reply was soft. "I was trying to do the right thing. Then maybe stop trying for me and start doing it with me." That night, Nadia packed an overnight bag and took the babies to her sister's for the weekend, not to punish him, but to breathe, to remember who she was before this man entered her life. Before love became so complicated, it sometimes felt like a performance under stage lights. She left a note on the kitchen counter. "We need space, not to end, just to think." The brownstone felt hollow without them. Julian walked the halls in silence, paused at each crib, touched folded onesies left behind. He thought of his younger self, ruthless in boardrooms, disconnected in hotel suites, a man who used silence as a shield. But Nadia had never wanted perfection. She wanted presence. He realized it wasn't his wealth or power that made him worthy of her love. It was his willingness to be vulnerable. 3 days later, he stood at her sister's front door, with no entourage, no lawyers, just a bouquet of gardenias and a handwritten letter. She opened the door, surprise etched across her face. "I don't want to fix this in one grand gesture," he said. "I want to fix it day by day, together." Nadia studied him for a long time, then stepped aside, leaving the door open. Nadia returned to the brownstone with the babies on a rainy Wednesday morning. It wasn't dramatic. No fanfare, no dramatic confessions. Just a quiet reconnection over warm bottles, soft lullabies, and the unspoken acknowledgement that both of them had changed. Julian took each baby in his arms, one by one, holding them longer than usual. He didn't speak much that day, but the care in his hands said more than any speech. At night, as they watched the babies sleep, Nadia leaned into his side. He hesitated, then wrapped his arm around her. "We're not the same people who started this," she whispered. "No," Julian replied. "We're better." They created a new rhythm together. She started working remotely with the museum again, consulting on new projects. Julian shifted part of his schedule to home-based operations. Mornings became shared diaper duty. Afternoons were split between boardrooms and burp cloths. Evenings were theirs, sometimes chaotic, often messy, always full. And amidst it all, something deeper emerged. They didn't talk about titles or status anymore. They talked about bedtime routines, teething gels, and which child had a habit of tugging Julian's tie every time he held her. Laughter returned, soft at first, then loud and frequent. Their love wasn't built on perfect moments. It was built on shared survival. Julian invited Nadia to a private dinner, not in a skyscraper or luxury suite, but at a restored greenhouse restaurant in the city's West End. The setting was serene, draped in soft ivy and lit by overhead lanterns. Midway through the meal, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, elegant box. Nadia froze. "Before you panic," he said gently. "This isn't what you think." He opened it, not to reveal a ring, but a locket. Inside were 4 miniature photos, Luca, Ariel, Elijah, and Nova, and a small inscription etched behind them. "You made me a father before I knew how to be a man." Nadia pressed a hand over her mouth, emotions surging. "It's a promise," he said. "Not a proposal, not yet. Just a promise that I'm not going anywhere." 3 weeks later, Julian held a press conference, not for investors, but for clarity. He spoke briefly, clearly. No PR spin. "I became a father to 4 children this year, and their mother is a woman I love deeply. I won't speak further on our private life, but I ask for peace and respect as we raise our family." He turned and walked away without taking questions. The media buzzed, but the tone shifted. The mystery now had definition. The speculation lost fuel. That night, Nadia found him on the balcony, overlooking the city. She wrapped her arms around his waist and whispered, "Thank you." He looked back at her, eyes warm. "For the first time in my life, I don't care what the headlines say." They weren't rushing, but they were no longer dancing around what they both felt. One night, after the babies had finally fallen asleep in unison, Julian brought her tea and sat beside her on the nursery floor. "I didn't know I could love like this," he said, eyes on the moonlight filtering through the curtains. "You didn't know you were allowed to," she replied, reaching for his hand. He leaned in, slowly, deliberately. And when they kissed, it wasn't new. It was the return of something lost, found again in quiet perseverance and patience. The next few weeks passed gently. The babies grew stronger. Nadia laughed more. Julian smiled easier. Their home was full, not with perfection but with meaning. Yet one email arrived quietly one afternoon. An anonymous tip forwarded to a media outlet. A claim involving Julian's company and a deal that had gone sour. Nadia saw his expression as he read it. A flicker of old worry, of past demons whispering through the cracks. She didn't ask. Not yet. Because for now, they still had this calm. But something was coming, and it wouldn't ask permission to arrive. It broke on a Tuesday morning. Julian's name splashed across headlines, not for fatherhood or philanthropy, but for a long-buried acquisition scandal from 5 years prior. A former competitor accused him of using insider knowledge to cripple their launch and acquire their tech under market value. The press pounced. Reports linked Julian's name to unethical negotiation. The allegations had no concrete evidence, yet they spread fast. And when one blogger added a photo of Nadia holding one of the babies with a caption that implied she was the reward for Julian's rise, it cut deep. She found the article through a friend's text. She read the headline once, then again. She sat in silence, her pulse thudding in her ears. By the time Julian walked through the door, the babies asleep and the house dim, she was seated at the kitchen table, expression unreadable. "You knew this was coming," she said. He nodded. "And you didn't warn me." His reply came slowly. "Because I thought I could contain it." She shook her head. "You promised to stop making decisions for both of us." "I was trying to protect me," she cut in. Again. Their voices didn't rise, but the silence after each sentence felt louder than shouting. Nadia stood, arms crossed tightly. "You built a life with me, with them. But part of you is still stuck behind glass, controlling everything from a safe distance." Julian exhaled. "That part of me built a life from nothing. And this part of me," she said, placing a hand over her heart, "needs honesty more than protection." The room stood still. He stepped closer, but she stepped back. "I need space again," she whispered. Nadia didn't leave this time. She stayed, for the babies, for herself, but she pulled back emotionally, offering only what was needed, withholding the rest. Julian, meanwhile, faced a corporate firestorm, legal statements, emergency meetings, a temporary step back from daily leadership roles. In private, he held the babies tighter, watched Nadia from a distance. She was graceful, composed, but no longer reachable. The worst part wasn't the headlines. It was knowing he might have broken something that took a lifetime to build. One night, Julian entered the nursery quietly. Nadia was rocking Nova, her eyes tired, her touch gentle. "I never used what I knew to destroy that company," he said softly. "What I did was aggressive, yes, but legal. Ruthless? Maybe, but not unethical." She didn't answer at first. Then, "I want to believe you." His voice cracked. "Then let me show you. Let me fight for this, not just in public, but in private. For us." Nadia looked down at the baby in her arms. "You have to stop protecting love like it's fragile," she said. "Start standing in it like it's unbreakable." They didn't fix everything in one night, but they began again. He offered transparency, emails, calls, legal briefs. She didn't ask for them, but the gesture mattered. He invited her to speak with his board's ethics council. She did, and left reassured. Bit by bit, trust began to mend, not perfectly, but persistently. The turning point came from someone unexpected, the founder of the former competitor himself. In a live interview, the man admitted that bitterness had clouded his judgment, that Julian had played the game harder than I was willing to, but not illegally. "I let envy lead me," the man said. "That was my mistake." The media spun, but the fire died fast, and the press that once stalked Julian's brownstone shifted focus to newer scandals. The storm passed, but its echoes lingered. In the weeks that followed, Julian stepped away from the spotlight. He focused on the brownstone, the babies, and, more intentionally than ever before, on Nadia. He no longer tried to prove things with grand acts. He proved it by showing up, daily, with consistency, with softness, and with no agenda but presence. Nadia noticed the changes. He didn't ask how to make things right anymore. He simply lived the answer. One evening, as the babies napped and soft jazz played through the living room, she turned to him. "You've changed." He looked over, startled, but attentive. She clarified, "Not who you are, just how you love." Julian set his mug down. "I didn't know love could be something you build. I thought it either struck or didn't." She nodded. "This love didn't strike. It stayed." Spring came, and with it came lightness. They took the babies for their first walk in the park, bundled in strollers, the sun cutting through budding branches. Strangers smiled. No cameras followed. Julian wore a soft grin the whole time. "I used to fly private jets across oceans for adrenaline," he said. "But watching Nova yawn might be the most thrilling thing I've seen all year." Nadia laughed. "We're officially boring." "Boring looks beautiful on us," he replied. One quiet Saturday morning, Julian prepared breakfast, badly. The toast was too crisp, the eggs a little runny, but the gesture made Nadia smile. Between bites, he pulled a velvet box from his pocket and placed it in front of her. She blinked. "Julian, open it." Inside was a thin silver bracelet, engraved along the inner edge, more than one night, always. He looked into her eyes. "This isn't a marriage proposal, it's a life proposal. Whatever pace you choose, wherever we go, I'm not stepping back. I want you, I want them. I want every morning and every messy, magical moment." Her answer came not in words, but in tears, and a kiss that said yes to every sentence. That evening, they had a tiny celebration. Just them, the babies, and her sister who brought cupcakes and sparkling juice. Julian danced in the living room with Ariel in his arms. Nadia hummed softly while rocking Elijah. Laughter echoed through the brownstone, weaving through rooms that had once known only silence and solitude. A few days later, Nadia visited her old foster home. She stood in front of the weathered building, hand pressed to her heart. She thought of who she'd been, unseen, unheard, but still dreaming. And now, she was mother to 4, partner to a man who had learned how to stay, architect of her own joy. She whispered a quiet thank you to the girl she once was, for surviving. Then she turned and walked away. Julian called his board later that week. "I'm not returning full-time," he said. "I'll advise, mentor, and stay involved, but I'm prioritizing the 4 babies I helped bring into this world. And the woman who made me believe in starting over." He hung up, closed the laptop, and picked up a pacifier. The living room was filled with toys and baby giggles. 4 small toddlers were taking unsteady steps across a padded floor. Nadia sat on the rug, camera in hand. Julian knelt beside her, arms open as Lucas stumbled into his chest. "You caught that?" he asked, breathless. "Every second," she said, laughing. He kissed her temple. They weren't flashy. They weren't flawless, but they were exactly what neither of them had dared hope for. It wasn't a traditional wedding, no cathedral, no designer gown, no celebrity guest list. Instead, Julian and Nadia stood beneath an arch of wildflowers in the garden behind the brownstone. Her dress was simple, ivory with soft lace along the sleeves. He wore a dark shirt, sleeves rolled, no tie. The babies, now walking, waddled around with floral crowns tilted on their tiny heads. Laughter filled the air. Her sister officiated. A handful of close friends gathered, forming a gentle circle of love. When it was Julian's turn to speak, he didn't read from a card. He simply said, "I spent my life building empires, but none of them compare to what I built with you." After the ceremony, they slipped away from the crowd. In the nursery, Julian opened a leather-bound journal. "I want to write something to them," he said. "To the babies? To the people they'll become?" He dipped the pen and began. "To Luca, Ariel, Elijah, and Nova, you were born from one night, but made us believe in forever. This world is unpredictable, but one truth will never change. You are wanted. You are loved. You turned 2 people into a family, and every sleepless night, every smile, every moment that changed us, it was worth it. Always." He handed the book to Nadia. She added, "When you ask how we met, we'll tell you it started with history, digital archives, and ancient artifacts. But it became about writing our own story. 1 heartbeat, then 4, and then everything changed. We wouldn't have it any other way." Years later, that garden bench became their quiet spot. Every evening, after dinner and chaos, they sat, sometimes with a baby monitor, sometimes with a child curled between them. "Do you regret anything?" Nadia asked one evening. Julian shook his head. "Only that I almost missed it, that I nearly let the past cost me my future." She leaned into him. "We got it anyway." On the baby's 3rd birthday, they hosted a gathering in the same garden. Nadia gave a short speech. "We used to think our love story was too unusual to make sense, but it made a family, and in the end, that's all that matters." Julian raised his glass. "To the night that gave us everything." One final scene. Nadia sits at her desk. She's drafting a new book proposal, Love Beyond Probability, How One Night Changed 4 Lives. The baby's laughter echoes in the background. Julian calls out from the kitchen. She turns toward the sound, smiles, types the last line of her proposal. "Love, like history, isn't just found in records. It's made in moments no one sees coming and chooses to stay." The camera fades out on their family, walking hand in hand down a quiet city street. No grand finale, just peace, just love that stayed. The brownstone hadn't changed much. A few more framed drawings on the walls, a deeper dent in the living room couch, but the same warmth lived inside. The front door opened, and in spilled 4 10-year-olds. Taller now, voices louder, spirits untamed. Julian stepped aside with practiced ease as backpacks flew, jackets landed on the banister, and someone shouted, "We aced the science project!" From the kitchen, Nadia appeared, apron dusted with flour. "That's 'cause your mom's DNA is 1/3 caffeine and 2/3 stubborn." Julian smiled. "And your dad's 100% competitive." That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Julian and Nadia sat in the garden again. A soft breeze carried the scent of lavender. Their hands found each other like muscle memory. 10 years, he murmured. From a museum gala to bedtime chaos. "And I'd do it all again," he said, leaning closer. She tilted her head. "Even the diaper stage?" He hesitated. "Okay, maybe I'd fast forward through a few nights." They laughed together, the kind of laugh that only builds after years of being each other's safe space. A narrator's voice returns, not from Julian or Nadia, but from the lens of reflection as photos and videos from their journey play. You don't always know the moment your life is going to change. You don't always recognize the night that becomes the foundation of forever. But sometimes all it takes is one evening, one unexpected yes, and a love that refuses to fade. Back inside the house, Julian sits with Nova, now writing a school essay titled "The Night That Changed Everything." She frowns. "But I wasn't even there." Julian replies, "That doesn't matter. You've lived this story every day since..." He pauses, then asks, "Want to hear something I never told anyone?" Nova's eyes widen. He leans in. "When I met your mom, I was the loneliest man in every crowded room. One conversation with her, and I finally wanted to stay." Cut to Nadia placing the journal they once wrote into, a leather-bound volume filled with letters, photos, and memories, into a wooden box. She seals it, writes 4 names across the top, and tucks it into the attic. Not to forget, but to pass down. Because love, like history, is meant to be preserved, not in timelines, but in truths. The final scene, the family, now 6 strong, walking into a school auditorium. Nadia's arm around Julian. The 4 children ahead of them, different personalities, matching spirit. The lights dim. A student film begins. And on screen is the title, "How My Parents Taught Me That Love Can Start Anywhere and Stay Everywhere." What started as one night became a legacy. If you stayed through this journey, thank you. Tell us in the comments, what did this story awaken in you? If you believe love is worth the risk, the work, and the wait, leave a comment, like this video, and subscribe for more unforgettable tales. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We create echoes